Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Cheap Seats here on One World Sports Radio. My name is Mpumutlani. We've got a full house today. We've got a lot to talk about. Probably our last show of the year, so we thought we'd have like everybody on. AB didn't make it at the last minute, which is disappointing because you want to have a full box, but that's okay. Remember, we are still we ran the competition with Classic Shirts ZA, which is covering my face now, which is awesome. And they are the sponsors that they've been our partners throughout the past month. The competition for the Classic Shirts t-shirt ended on the 10th of December, which was last week Friday. You could have won this lovely Manchester United 1999 shirt. And so we're here to announce the winner of that shirt. So the winner was selected. The competition closed on Friday night. Winner was chosen from a random system generator. Wahid, you can name it, whatever it is. It's called a random system generator. We got all the entries in. Everybody who tagged multiple times. There was some guy who tagged, like, I think 30 of their friends. I think the winner also tagged like a lot of their friends. And it came down to that random system generator, and the winner was chosen on Friday night. The winner was notified on Saturday morning, and the shirt was delivered to them. And so we have a picture, and the winner is, congratulations to Dino Paulo. He got this lovely shirt. You can see it even has the Champions League insignia on it. He's a very, very happy customer. And I really do hope he enjoys that shirt. But for those who didn't win, we've got something for you that you can use. Because obviously we were the guys at Classic Shirts were like, let's give the people something a little bit more. So we've managed to organize, and this is the promotion for this week, but we'll tell you what we've managed to organize. We've got this Brazil 1998 shirt for you. Ronaldo R9, looks amazing. You see there at the bottom. Yes. You see at the bottom, Cheap Seats 50. That's the discount code that you can use when you go to Classic Shirts ZA's website to buy. You can get 50 Rand off of these shirts and other shirts as well. But this is the promotion that's happening on their website right now. You can see it's already packaged for you to wear, to relive those glory days with Brazil. Cyrus is wearing a Brazil shirt right now. 1998 wasn't the best year for Brazil because Thierry Henry pipped them to the post, but that shirt is iconic.
It really is. It really is. You know, what's crazy is that it makes me think about, we forget how time really wipes out all the stories. Who remembers when Ronaldo almost didn't play and the whole, rumor was like Nike forced him to play. They were never going to let him miss the World Cup final. And he was horrible in the final. He just wasn't fine. And then so the stories that came out afterwards, but Ronaldo, the Seleção, El Phenomenon. I mean, he was incredible.
He wasn't fine for that final, and then in the Champions League he was rushed back for Inter Milan that season, and he was well off the races against Man United in the quarterfinal as well. I remember as a little boy thinking like Ronaldo, he's coming back against us, and he was well off the bases again because he was struggling with injury all season.
Yes, he was struggling with injuries, but he's still amazing. If the guys at Classic Shirts, and they're probably listening to us, Yusuf and the guys, if they can get that 2002 jersey that was at that World Cup in Korea, Japan,
Gilberto Silva one.
Oh man.
It was beautiful. Oh, but let's not forget that the jersey will look great, but Ronaldo's haircuts were horrible.
Okay, guys, let's get into our show. Today's show is an interesting one. We looked at the chasing pack, like in a marathon. Wahid will know this. In a marathon, you've always got the leaders who are pulling away at the start, and the question's always, can the chasing pack catch them? And I think in this season, I don't think so, and we spoke about that last week. But then what we've also discussed, what we also see in this season, is that this chasing pack has some very strong runners, some very strong teams at the top. running through this, and it kind of seemingly is, and he's laughing because he knows he was hoping Manchester United would be the chasing pack.
No, I'm laughing on an inside joke here because we just need to ask Dean how it feels to be in the chasing pack where he's never been able to catch up in an actual race. Guys, Dean has lost to me.
Let's keep it to
100%
Premier
of the
League.
time we've raced.
Okay. Let's carry on with the analogy, right? Well, he's not Elliot Kipchoge, but Manchester City look like they're Elliot Kipchoge and a whole lot of other Kenyans and East Africans in that front pack with Chelsea and Liverpool. The one thing that's been bothering us this week is COVID, and we'll talk about that as we go along. We'll also talk about Afcon. But when I look at the log, and I'm going to start with Dean because he's got no dog in the fight. When I look at the log, we all don't have any dogs in the fight. I can't, except for Cyrus and Tempo. But I look at that Man City thing, and I look back at last year. Game week 10 was when they started their run of 16 wins. We're now into, I think game week 10 they started. They haven't gone unbeaten since then. They've lost to West Ham, but they've gone 6 in a row straight. The question is, obviously, the question last year was who could catch them, and we asked that on the show. This year is Liverpool's there. Chelsea are there. 2 points away, 1 point away. Dean, is City at the end of Christmas going to be at the top with a much more sizable gap?
It's an interesting question because I think last year was obviously a very different season, but there was no challenges with Liverpool's injuries problems. A lot of the guys had problems all over the place, but their main rival, the person that was mainly chasing them, was probably Liverpool, and we all know their injury problems. This year, it's a very different season. And last year, what you mentioned was they went on that run, and it was their first game was the game where it started was against Leeds, and they play Leeds this week. So it's kind of like the same thing coming over again. It could be the start of that next kind of run, even though they don't really need to go on a run. I mean, they're top of the Premier League, but if they do exactly what they did last year, it'll be crazy. The one thing that I will say though is they are going to have, and Cyrus and Seppo can correct me or come back at me, but I think Chelsea are going to fall off a little bit. I think that their defense is not looking so great, and they have a bit of a missed fixtures coming up. I think it's like early Jan or at the end of Jan where it's going to cause a little bit of disruption. So I think it's going to become a City-Liverpool race. Liverpool are in a very tough position as well because obviously Afcon, which we'll touch on with Salah and Mane, their two best players probably going. So I do think it's going to be a case of if City can put the hammer down now up until Christmas, I don't think Liverpool will be able to touch them without Salah and Mane around. So it could be one of those things where City take it by the horns and they just push through from now. And they've got the squad to do it. They've got the manager to do it. They've done it before. I don't see any reason why they can't do it again. The only thing that I will say is that there's a big asterisk next to that, and that's Liverpool are a much stronger Liverpool than there was last season, and obviously Liverpool won it the season before. So I would say it's between those two. Chelsea I see falling off, and then obviously it's just a dogfight for fourth.
We're going to park Liverpool a little bit because that's going to lead into our AFCON discussion. Seppo, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, your team hasn't done... It looks over the past month like Chelsea's trending down. But if you look at it, it's actually one loss and a draw in the last 6. And you're 2 points away. How are you feeling coming into this, into Christmas, with this being part of the chasing pack? Because you were first 2 weeks ago, now you're third, and now it feels like you're now hunting instead of being the hunted. And Seppo is we can't
you're either
hear
on
you.
mute or you've lost your
forgot
voice.
to plug your headphones in.
Yes.
Oh no,
We
he
can't.
lost his
Oh
voice.
no, we can't. No, he's like speaking in a class. I'm gonna ask that to Cyrus. And then Tempo, you'll come back. Maybe just restart.
No. So So I think something interesting. I do feel Chelsea have fallen off the pace. They just don't seem to be at the races. And what had happened at the beginning of the season was they were just so solid at the back. I mean, there are London teams. The so solid crew just makes great sense here. But the thing is that what's been a bit different is some of these games that they like the loss to West Ham. I kind of felt it was going to happen, and I think that had to do with the fixture congestion, excuse me. And then once that has sort of passed, you're then looking at it in terms of, so who are the players that are available? And they've had a massive midfield issue. When you have to play Saul, you suddenly realize that there are major
left wing back.
and that left wing back was probably the best game he played for Chelsea. But what's been interesting is seeing somebody like Ruben Loftus-Cheek play really well in that role, though having said that, he's not N'Golo Kante or Kovacic. So I think that engine room will sort itself out, and from there you'll start to see more things happen with the much derided Romelu Lukaku, who Wahid has been sort of rubbing his hands with glee at for his misfiring. Yeah, but what's interesting though, and this will be the last point about Chelsea, is that I do think okay, so they're gonna obviously miss Mendy. There's no question of it. He's so solid, and when Kepa's playing, it feels like a Chicken Little kind of thing. The sky could be falling any second. But with that, I think will come a renewed focus on defense. Chelsea have taken their eye off the ball in a lot of games and started to believe their own hype. And that's what's cost them in a lot of these games. The Leeds game, they got too worked up. They outplayed Leeds for large portions of the game, and they were like, for the second Leeds goal, Rudiger was at the halfway line trying to tackle somebody. What the hell was he doing there? And so it's that level of focus that will have to return if these guys want to win. And I think that's what Tuchel is going to drill into them, especially when Mendy's gone, because they're going to be like, look, there's nobody here to mop up your mess. We've had to play Kepa, who's basically like, the broom cupboard broom. So be careful.
Okay, Tempo, can you hear us? Oh no, Tempo, Tempo, please check your mic settings as we move on. So as we move to Liverpool and we talk about that, Wahid, looking at this Liverpool squad, their biggest issue is Afcon coming into it. They have that massive game on the 2nd of Jan against Chelsea, because all three teams have a similar type of not so easy. I think someone's got Spurs. Liverpool has Spurs in the midst of it. I think Liverpool have the hardest Christmas fixtures with Newcastle.
Glad
Spurs,
you said
Leeds,
hard there, Paul.
Leicester. Well, other teams have Leeds, Leicester, Newcastle, Brentford, Arsenal, and Chelsea. And that's City. And then Chelsea have Everton, Wolves, Villa, and Brighton. But I look at Liverpool and I'm like, 26th of December, Mo Salah's last game. After that, you have a month without Mo Salah, without Mane, without Joel Matip, without Naby Keita for cover. How do they navigate this period?
With difficulty, and the problem is going to be that on the looks of things, like at face value, they do have some form of replacement for those players, but nowhere near the level of the players they're going to lose, especially in Mane and Salah, who are the driving force behind Liverpool and everything good Liverpool do. The problem is though that if you look at the replacements and you look at the current if Liverpool were to lose Salah and Mane today, who would have to come in? And it's Jota, Firmino, and Origi.
Minamino.
And you have
Minamino will come in, surely.
Yeah, and Minamino, sure, but I mean, we
and
talk
Ox.
about
and Ox.
But the problem I'm saying is that those players are not nearly of the caliber of Mane and Salah, but also they are injury-plagued players at the moment. Those are players who have significant injury records over the season and over the last season. And if Liverpool were to run into an injury crisis with their replacements, they'd be in a massive problem. They'd be struggling to win games. At the moment, when they are struggling, somewhere Salah is coming up with a little bit of magic. And you'd hope that they could replicate that. Well, they'd hope they could replicate that. I certainly would never hope for that. that they could replicate that through Origi.
I second and third that.
But yeah, I don't know where the goals will come from without those players going to Afcon. That's me looking at them and saying, where are your goals going to come from? And at face value, I'm not sure. Having said that, Liverpool are a very good squad, managed by a very good manager, and good squads full of champion players find a way to win games. So if they can channel that, they might not be as bad off as we're assuming they will be.
Seppo, I think you've got a bit of an echo there. It's fine. It's okay. It's okay. We're all gonna mute.
Let's go to echo cancellation.
Okay, wait. Audio echo. Switch it off. No.
Yeah, you're fine.
You're good. You're good now. You're good.
Oh, Owens. Yeah. Okay. What am I allowed to say?
So my question to you is, how do you see Chelsea navigating Christmas with these fixtures, knowing that you've got City seemingly humming, and this is the scary part about this and everything else. They're not playing good football. They're not. It doesn't feel like they've hit gear 5, or is it? It feels like, remember when we were all not thinking Gundogan could carry them and not picking Gundogan in our FPL team. It's that period, but you've got two teams behind them, 2 points away. The gap's not there. Yes, Liverpool have Afcon, but Chelsea have been stuttering, but it's still okay. So what do you see when you look at the side and you look at Christmas?
Inconsistency at the back has been a real problem. You could definitely say that the problem is in the midfield. The forwards were never really firing. Kai Havertz is leaving a lot to be desired. But you can really see the difference that Kante makes, that Kante Kovacic makes. Huge differences there. And as Cyrus was saying, Loftus-Cheek, he's very strong in the middle, very strong, a strong ball carrier. It's hard to get the ball off him. But yeah, just the back line is looking vulnerable, and that's the problem. What we also saw was the wing backs also,
I would say,
without Chilwell as well. Alonso is he doesn't cut
Alonso.
it.
Everyone
quite
takes
as
a
much.
step back. No.
So now all of you guys have realized that the Cinderella, the shoe, it's past 12 o'clock now, Alonso.
I'd like to take us back to the start of the season when we were doing our outward looking forecasting show, and I said that Chelsea were a midfielder or two, like an injury or two in the midfield away from looking decidedly average. And I think I was laughed at by some, but I think that there's
they signed Saul. They signed Saul, and we thought it was like the best signing ever. Turns out,
what did I say? I said if you look at highlights of his on YouTube, they date back to 2016.
Yes, and he'd fallen out for a reason.
All I'm saying,
but to Wahid's point, it's not an injury or two. This has been an injury or 6. And that's really something you can't necessarily make any sort of plan about, because when you're starting to have to play the likes of Ross Barkley, you are plumbing the depths. So and
he didn't play that badly.
No,
he just didn't finish.
Ross Barkley is just very selfish, and the thing is, Ross Barkley is just he's a more talented John Joe Shelby, and that's the biggest issue with Ross Barkley right now.
Very true.
Yeah, look, I would send him to Newcastle. January, I feel like Newcastle.
That's the plan.
Newcastle are going to have a squad of 50. We all send them out.
Can't get rid of any of their guys.
Okay, guys. So the other point was Afcon. Obviously, spoke about Liverpool, but let's have a broader look. There are 47 players in the Premier League that are going to Afcon.
Sure.
Not a single one from Spurs. Just want to put that out there. Not a single one.
That's true. Manchester United have 3. Arsenal's got, I think, 4. Liverpool's also got 4. It's a lot. But the key ones are Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, Edouard Mendy, and I'll put in Eric Bailly for you, Wahid.
I was about to say Eric Bailly because we've got a perma-croc in Rafael Varane. And Victor Lindelof seems to have a few medical issues at the moment, which means that Eric Bailly would be the stand-in. And that means that we had Eric Bailly Afcon journey away from playing Phil Jones at the heart of our defense. And that sends shivers down my spine.
What a comeback. Yes, but the thing about these teams, these players, are that for Sadio Mane, who plays for Senegal, for Mo Salah plays for Egypt, they will be expected to be in that final spot. I looked at City. City have only got
Riyad Mahrez.
Riyad Mahrez, who are the current African champions, but the way City are playing in pep rotation doesn't seem they're going to be phased a lot.
Okay.
However, so here's the thing, and I'm going to ask Cyrus first, and I'm going to go to Dean. How do the Liverpool supporters, will they be supporting everybody else but Egypt in this Afcon so that Mo Salah can come home quickly?
So they definitely will be, but I do think that they're probably, trying to back Jurgen Klopp and calling it a little tournament. And I say hell no to that. I love Afcon. There's something I want to say that we haven't touched on, and this is going to be a really interesting thing about Afcon and what happens with the Premier League as we go forward. There's a COVID issue in Manchester right now, right? And what we're seeing is that we're talking about City and how they might run away with things. But once they hit a bit of a COVID crisis and it hits a couple of their players, it then becomes really tricky as to what happens around them. So City have got to be very careful as to what happens around their players. So we're talking about Afcon being the thing that affects them, and they'll just sail through it. But they could potentially have illness issues as we head into that. The second part here is, let's look at what happens at Afcon itself. There might be a situation where they might have to delay certain games because of COVID too, and that might then also cause an elongation of certain things. I wouldn't be surprised if they have the sort of reserve days that they have in cricket. I don't know if that's a thing that they might actually institute. And so what happens if you then have a Mane or a Salah who are out for longer because they, into the quarters or the semis? So that could also be another issue. And then it's the thing of what kind of player comes back, because tournament football is exhausting, and they're not staying in the Hilton. They're going to be, it's going to be rough. Not to say Cameroon's bad, but it's not going to be the lap of luxury that they've had. So I think those kinds of issues will be what hinders some of the players as they go and then come back.
Yes, you also need to just have a little think about the changing situation in England and what type of quarantine rules will be imposed on players when they get back from a country like Cameroon, because things are changing at the drop of a pin, and you could have players like Mane and Salah arrive back to not being allowed to train with the squad for maybe 10 days or something along those lines, and then you've got another issue in terms of the reintegration into the team being delayed.
Yes, Dean, with COVID affecting teams, and my only pet peeve was when Arsenal's 6 starters couldn't play for COVID in the first game of the season, we carried on playing, but I think that was...
You're probably going to lose that game anyway on board, so it's fine.
Yeah, I know that, because it's the mighty Brentford. But Manchester United somehow are running away from the mighty Brentford at home, away from home. But it's seemingly now it's coming in, and I don't know how teams... Is there a way that teams can protect themselves? Like, protect their star players just to make sure that, there's no outbreak? Because we saw at Manchester United, they've shut down the training facility. Arsenal's putting in some stringent measures. Spurs were the first team to show us that there's a COVID issue. But for the guys who are there at the top, you don't want to have a week like that, surely.
Yeah, I think the big thing now is, especially around this festive period, if you take, and it happened with Spurs, you're out for, let's call it 10 days. That's now 3 matches. It could be 3 matches that you're out for, So it's not a case of, you just missed 1 week and, you can kind of sit it out and it's fine. The squad can deal with it. If your team gets hit, it's depleted. And I think that's the real problem now that England's facing is it's a string of games that are coming thick and fast at every single team. And, it just takes one team to play a COVID-infected team, and then that team's gone. And we know how this virus works, so it's not no one's gonna escape it.
All that touching in the box, all that Harry Maguire touching in the box.
But that's why Maddison is diving in the box for Leicester. He's trying not to get touched. He's trying to be safe.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is also, and that's where from a Spurs perspective, it's a bit tough, is you go on a bit of a run, or you start gaining a bit of momentum, which some of these teams will look to do over this festive period. And if you then have to close your training ground for 10 days, 2 weeks, it's almost like a bit of a season reboot or a season restart. Your squad comes back, they're not fit, they haven't trained, and all of a sudden now you have to make up the games in an already busy period. You know, there's so many games and there's not enough time. So you're just going to have games coming at you left, right, and center. You're not going to be fit. Your squad's not going to be gelled. So it's a very tough period. And yeah, a lot of the COVID, you know, like there's reports today that Man City and Leeds is in doubt. United, Brentford's already delayed. Spurs, Leicester, we don't know if it's going forward.
United, Brentford being delayed actually might have done us a bit of a favor, because it gives the first team squad wasn't really affected. They've all gone home and isolated. The training facility's been closed for 24 hours. And with the game being delayed, what it's meant is that the training ground will be closed today. They'll go back tomorrow. And then United only have one game in 14 days, which gives the new manager quite a lot of time to work with his squad. If the team managed to stay COVID free, that does play a little bit to United. Like United do gain a little bit of an advantage there with a lot of time in the training ground, which Ralph probably came in thinking he wouldn't get.
It's just weird how you've exposed that the league's rigged in United's favor.
I know, right?
Like in 14 days.
Look,
the rest of us
clearly like with the Champions League
even got
the Champions League draw. Manchester United fans were like, well, I like UEFA saw that United were playing PSG. They were like, we don't want that. We don't want any of that.
Cyrus, do you remember even God supports Man United? and his name is Cantona.
Yeah, we've heard such
Wahid,
That's clearly talking about Matt Letizia.
Wahid, we've got a comment for you from the other Dean, not this one. He can't be putting comments on YouTube. He says Wahid always has receipts, and for the one time he is right. And then he always says, agree with Wahid, the cynic in me thinks Mr. Ralph is using this time accordingly, much like how City did last year this time.
So that impressive 1-0 win against Norwich is really working his magic there.
That was horrible. Sorry.
Norwich were looking good.
They were looking really good. Let's not forget that Conte's first game at Spurs wasn't a humdinger either. So was Tuchel's first game at Chelsea a humdinger?
It was against Wolves and it was a 0-0 draw. It wasn't really wow.
Okay,
but we didn't lose.
But it's okay, cool, fine, that's okay. Temple, one other thing about this period on the back end of Afcon, actually, obviously we've spoken about the quarantines and everything else, is that Chelsea still need to go play the Club World Cup.
This time win it.
Yeah, hopefully. That's the problem.
In the middle of February. That's gonna be fun. But like, how important is it for Chelsea to like do deals in January to try and strengthen the squad? Because at the face of it, obviously you've got all these injuries, but now it feels like you need to shell out a lot more money after you guys have shelled out a whole lot over the previous off season and this one.
Yeah, Chelsea are in a bit of trouble. As we heard, fixtures coming in thick and fast. The Club World Cup means 2 fixtures off the Premier League calendar that need to be put in somewhere. And with these COVID outbreaks, who knows? There could be a delay. That means 3 games in a row. And squad depth was a good thing to have. But at the same time, just looking at the depth now, the centre-backs aren't looking too convincing. Christensen, with his contract doubts, I'm not sure if his head's in the game. So we're going to have to see what happens. But, yeah, just the fixtures and the volume of fixtures probably isn't going to be good for a lot of the players. But they'll have to see what happens. They're a very competitive side, and that's what you build depth for. And it's going to be time for the people in the what you call them understudies to really show up and really make a claim for their places now.
Well, so who is the left back understudy? Because we need to find that guy. Because
his name is Marcos Alonso.
We cannot.
And if it's not Alonso, sometimes it's Callum Hudson-Odoi. Great moving forward. But
Callum it is.
No, but he's weak defensively. Defensively, he's just
as the turning circle of the Titanic, and we don't really need that.
Okay. Okay, so
True.
obviously, to go with the math and analogy that I started off with, obviously now with there, you've got the three. At the end of these next 3-4 game weeks, there will be a team at the top, and they probably might even have a gap. And I think it will be City, and then it will be Chelsea, then Liverpool there, largely because I think it feels like Chelsea are trending down with all these injuries. And when Mo Salah leaves, guys, Mo Salah's gone. Mane is gone. Like, you can't replace that. So, but do you guys see it in a different way? And I'm going to start with Wahid. At the end of January, yes, you've got City playing Liverpool on the 2nd of January. You've got Arsenal playing no, it's Chelsea, Liverpool in January 2, and Arsenal playing City as well on the 1st of Jan. After those games, who do you think will be sitting at the top? Is it going to be one of those situations where, like, oh, guys, City ran away with it? Or is it going to be like, oh, it's actually a lot closer and even someone in the chasing pack has come through?
Yeah, I suspect that City are going to run away with this. I think that there'll be a pretty big gap. They are much better than everybody else, and they're not losing their players to tournaments mid-season. So
they are losing Riyad Mahrez.
But they can cope with
it.
Their squad is well equipped to cope with losing Mahrez, who's also not nearly as important to their squad as Mo Salah or Sadio Mane. They're definitely well equipped to cope with that sort of loss. So I suspect City will probably open up a bit of a gap. I'd almost think that Liverpool will consolidate their second place and like not really get drawn into it. My feeling is that Chelsea might get drawn into the Champions League battle. I haven't been impressed with them over the last couple of weeks, and I don't think that gap between Chelsea and fifth is huge. And I think it's not insurmountable. So I think what we're more likely to see is Chelsea being drawn into a Champions League battle, Liverpool consolidating second, and City going on with a sizable lead.
Yeah, just on that as well.
And he didn't include sixth, though. He's leaving Arsenal out of all of this, which is wild. But anyway, we don't have a club captain right now.
Yeah.
Cyrus, what do you think is going to happen?
Well,
can Chelsea push themselves back up into that? Oh, hold on.
Let Tsepo make his point, and then I'll speak up to Tsepo.
Okay.
Thank you. One thing I did want to mention is that City's fixtures for the next 4 are looking absolutely stellar. It's Leeds, Newcastle away. Yeah. Newcastle have been conceding goals like crazy, and then it's just Leicester and Brentford. So they aren't really challenged that much. Whereas Chelsea, for example, they have a few tricky fixtures. Everton at home, not that bad, but Wolves have been showing that they can defend. Chelsea don't look good at scoring right now. Aston Villa and then Brighton as well. And Gerrard, there's something in the water there. In Aston Villa. So, yeah.
You're struggling to score. Who'd have thought you bought a world-class 28-year-old for £100 million?
He was injured and he just came where he take a chill pill, my friend. Just blow him for 1 second.
Shocking. He looks like a giraffe on ice skates, bro.
Whoa, we're trying
to be professional.
Yeah.
Love it.
Martial is permanently on fraud watch.
Yeah, look, the reality
is not.
As I don't think Romelu Lukaku has been anywhere close to his best, and frankly, it's hard to be when you're not necessarily getting service and then you're out for a little bit. What I do think, though, is that they haven't played to his strengths, as most teams that he's played for haven't, apart from maybe Inter Milan. But he's not necessarily the person that I want to talk about here. I do think that when we look at Chelsea, one of the biggest issues that they have to do is to solve what's happening going forward in terms of the creativity. You've got Pulisic, you've got Ziyech, you've got Hudson-Odoi, you've got...
By the way, Ziyech is going to Afcon too, just to let you know.
Well, has he sorted out his issues with the coach? Because he wasn't getting selected because he was fighting with the coach. So that's been one of the major issues. He might not go. That's also the other thing. But if he doesn't go, I do think that's actually, it's not a terrible thing for Chelsea, because we should see more of Christian Pulisic, who we have not seen much of, and also potentially seeing Kai Havertz play off the right flank or the left flank, and because he's not a center forward, and that false nine absolute BS. Doesn't sit right with me. But there's clearly a problem with Lukaku's fitness, because he's just not been getting game time. He's been coming on for the last 10, 15 minutes of games. And often when we're trying to chase a cause, you'll see him come on and then they're not even playing the ball to him. So I think that Chelsea's biggest issue here will be what happens when they have to play at the highest level possible and try and get Timo Werner to do things other than run and look lost. The guy dribbles like Alan Shearer's one leg, and it's just not good.
Aaron Shearer's one leg scored like 100 goals in the Premier League. So
but it never dribbled at
that
all.
One leg.
It never dribbled at all. He will admit to it himself. Alan Shearer tried to dribble once and fell over himself and realized he just needs to pass and shoot.
So Cyrus, before you continue, Chelsea's list of fixtures in Jan, it's not a so-called New Year or good New Year, because you've got Liverpool, City, and Spurs in the league following each other. Obviously, there's an FA Cup tie in the middle there. And that's going to be something I think you're working towards, trying to sort it all out throughout December to make sure that by the time you get to that first fixture,
those will
it
be
works
the ones.
out fine.
They will target those specific games because that's actually a perfect time to play those teams when you look at it. Tuchel will have a lot of work on his hands to try and make the most of the players that he has at the moment. Mason Mount seems to have found form again, which is really good for Chelsea. But you need to have more of the players playing at a really high level. We're not seeing through balls and that sort of thing. That's why City, for me, are really the odds-on favorites. I do think, though, that Divock Origi is a player who, yes, he's currently struggling with a bit of an injury issue. But, Divock, for some reason, when the chips are down and you need somebody to just, somehow get a goal, he becomes prime Ian Rush. And, then you're like, okay, I can't believe this is happening. So I do think that Liverpool will hope that that's what happens. And maybe Diego Jota becomes the Sadio Mane and I don't know who, Minamino becomes he'll never be the Salah.
Guys,
but they'll try to find a way.
They will. This is where you're going to see Jurgen Klopp's managerial ability. Essentially, that's what it is. Without your best player, your best two players, you're going to figure it out. Dean, obviously Chelsea have the KBVB Heskey, and I'm assuming that's Timo Werner. Thanks, Wahid.
No, Lukaku.
Dean, how are you?
Lukaku.
Huh? Lukaku. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay, fair enough, Lukaku. How are you seeing these three teams and how they're going to navigate through this period?
Yeah, I think from a Chelsea perspective, a lot, and I don't know when N'Golo Kante is expected to come back, but I think a lot of their hopes rely on when he comes back. I think Kovacic is due to come back pretty shortly.
He's now COVID-Chich as opposed to.
Oh my gosh!
He came back from the injury, then got COVID.
Yeah. So I think Chelsea are, as we've said, I think Chelsea will fall off. Tough fixtures. We're really going to. You mentioned we're going to see Klopp's coaching ability. I think we're going to see Tuchel's coaching ability now with that Chelsea squad and the kind of issues that they've got there. But yeah, I just can't see. I can't see City not running away with it. We've spoken about their fixtures, spoken about their squad. The one thing I will say is obviously do a little bit of a Spurs punt, but we have got closer to top four than we have by not playing games, which is a ridiculous thing to say. But
the Spurs are better when they're not playing. No, that makes
we are much better,
sense.
much better than when we don't play. So I think it's going to become tight. I think it's going to be a City-Liverpool 1-2, and then it's going to be, I reckon, Chelsea, United, Spurs running for third and fourth, and then we'll see.
Guys, what did West Ham and Arsenal ever do to you?
What about
I know what Arsenal did to you,
it's
but
what they've
about
done
West Ham?
The thing is, West Ham is
it's not sustainable.
And they're missing. They're going to miss Said Benrahma as well. And
he's not done much. So this is
look at Antonio.
If
Antonio is not firing, they're not.
He's a waste man right now.
Not firing, boom, they can't win a game.
Jared Bowen, all he did was just score against Chelsea, and that's what West Ham will do. They'll lift themselves up for games against Chelsea, and then it's hope for the best for the rest of them.
London derbies.
Okay, guys.
Exactly like Moises Everton. They beat the teams they weren't expected to beat and lose to the teams they expected to beat.
That's it. That's
And
why
they've beaten Chelsea and Liverpool. So that's a pretty awesome thing. They've been the pantomime villain this Christmas. And I hope they're not tomorrow night, because I do not want to see David Moyes running around the Emirates tomorrow night, because that's going to be a problem.
He's
but
packed
anyway,
his trainers. He's ready to run.
Jesse taught him some dance moves.
Yes, but guys, thank you very much. That probably is the last cheap seats of the year, so thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back in the new year, so enjoy the Christmas of football. We're not going to talk about it, we're just going to enjoy it. We're going to sit down, we're going to have a feast over Christmas, and then you're gonna get into New Year's with all those big fixtures. That first one on the 2nd of Jan being Liverpool-Chelsea, but the day before that, it will be Arsenal City. So have a great Christmas. Have a great New Year's. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you to our friends at Classic Shirts ZA who've been supporting us. And congratulations to Dino on winning the shirt. And yeah, remember Cheap Seats 50. The discount code is at the bottom if you want to go and check out what you have. Remember, you can even get new shirts, this season shirts. They've got it all stocked out. You can see Wahid with his tablecloth there, parading it proudly. But from myself and the rest of the Cheap Seats team, have a great Christmas, have a great New Year's. Goodbye, good night, and le sale kakahiso.